"Mom, this isn't a life. Come home." That was my son, Daniel Danny, though he's 50 now and hasn't let me call him Danny in front of other people since about 1989. He was standing in the little kitchen of my place here, sweated clean through a golf shirt, staring at my 2 pots and my 1 good knife and the plastic stool I sit on to shell prawns. 3 days into a visit he'd been promising me for 2 years. And that was the thing he'd flown all this way to say, "Come home." I didn't answer him right off. Old floor nurse habit. You don't rush the scared ones. You let their own voice hang in the air a second, because half the time, they don't much like the sound of it either. Let me back up, though, because you can't understand that kitchen without the rest of it. I'm 78 years old. My name is Gail Pelletier. I spent 40 years on a medical surgical floor at a hospital in Lewiston, Maine, the kind of nursing where you're on your feet the whole shift and you learn to read a person's whole bad night off the color of their lips. 40 years of other people's worst days. I was good at it. That's not bragging. It's just about the only thing I know for dead certain about myself. And now I live in a fishing town in Thailand I couldn't have found on a map 3 years ago. Prachuap Khiri Khan. Took me a solid month to say it without reading it off a card. There's a bay out my window shaped like a crescent moon, and a mountain behind the town with a temple up top, and monkeys that'll lift the fruit right out of your hand, and it's been coming up on 2 years now that I've called this home. My boy hates it here. Not the place exactly, he hates that I'm in it. I understand it, if I'm honest. To Danny, I'm his mother, and mothers are supposed to be findable. Reachable in an afternoon's drive, there for the school concerts, close enough that a person doesn't have to think about it. Instead, his mother sold the house he grew up in and moved to the far side of the planet where he can't picture the doctor, can't pronounce the street, can't do a single thing if the phone rings wrong at 3 in the morning. If it were my mother, I might have said the same, might have said it louder. But here's the piece he doesn't have. He didn't see the woman in that house before I left it. Walter and I paid that house off in 2006, little cape on a street in Lewiston with a maple out front that turned the color of a struck match every October. Raised Danny there, and after everything I'll get to it was just me in it. 3 bedrooms of quiet, the furnace kicking on in the dark and me lying there doing arithmetic on the heating oil because a Maine winter eats a fixed income alive, and mine was Social Security and a small hospital pension and not $1 more. Around $2,050 a month from Social Security, about $850 from the pension. Call it $2,900 a month, and a good chunk of it going up the chimney from November to April. That's not the sad part. I want to be careful here, because this is not a sad story, whatever my son thinks. The sad part wasn't the money. The sad part was that I'd spent my whole life being the one who showed up for other people, and there was nobody left in that house to show up for. A nurse with no patients, a wife with no husband. You get so good at carrying that when they set the load down, you tip right over. So no, when Danny stood in my kitchen and said this isn't a life I didn't fight him, I just thought, "Son, you have got that exactly backwards. What I had back home, that lovely, safe, findable arrangement you'd like me to go back to that wasn't a life either. That was a waiting room. I'll tell you about his visit. All of it, the good and the ugly, because there was some of each, and I'm too old to pretty it up now. There was a night by the water we won't either of us forget, and not in a good way. There was a morning I'd trade a year for. And there's the reason the title of this whole thing is what it is that some small, mean, honest part of me wishes he'd never come at all. Not because I don't love him, because he held up a mirror, and I saw everything I left, all at once, and it near knocked me down. But that's the end. Let me start where it started. Let me tell you about Walter, and about the colleague who sent me a photograph of a plate of squid, and the 7 words that got me on an airplane at 76 years of age. Because before Danny ever landed in that airport looking so worried I wanted to hug him and shake him at the same time before any of it, somebody said a thing to me that cracked the door. She said, "What's it cost you to look?" Walter's heart started failing him when he was 71. Congestive heart failure, the slow kind, the kind I'd nursed in 100 strangers and never once thought I'd be nursing across my own kitchen table. He'd been an electrician, Walter. 30-some years wiring houses and mills around Androscoggin County, strong through the shoulders his whole life, the sort of man who fixed the neighbor's furnace on Christmas morning and wouldn't take a dime. And this thing took him the way it takes them, not all at once, which would almost be a mercy, but a floor at a time, like a house settling. First it was the stairs, then it was the walk to the mailbox, then it was the nights, propped up on 3 pillows because lying flat felt like drowning, and me awake beside him counting his breaths without letting on I was counting. I was still working part of that stretch. Then I wasn't, because you can't chart other people's decline all day and come home and chart your husband's. So I retired, and I did the only thing I've ever really known how to do. I nursed him. In our own house. For the better part of 3 years. People say that must have been so hard, and it was, but not the way they mean. The hard part wasn't the lifting or the medications or the oxygen tubing snaking down the hall. I could do all that in my sleep, and near enough did. The hard part was that I loved him, and I was his nurse, and those are 2 different jobs, and some days there wasn't room in me for both. I'd catch myself assessing him, respirations, color, ankles, when what he wanted was his wife to just sit and hold his hand and not. He said to me once near the end, "Quit nursing me and come to bed." I about broke in half. He passed when I was 75. In the house, in the morning, with his hand in mine, which is more than most of my patients ever got, and I know it. And then the quiet came down like snow. I don't have good words for that first year. I'd been a caregiver my entire adult life, 40 years of patience, 3 years of Walter, and when it stopped, I didn't feel free. I felt useless. I'd stand in the kitchen at 10 in the morning with nothing to do for anybody and no idea who I was if I wasn't doing for somebody. I ate standing up. I stopped cooking real meals, what's the point, for one. The house got too big and too cold and too full of him, and the heating bill came anyway, and I sat at the table doing the same tired arithmetic, $2,900 coming in, the oil and the taxes and the roof someday going out, and I thought, this is it. Then, this is the part where you just get smaller until you're gone. I want to be plain that I wasn't in danger. I wasn't going to do anything foolish. It was worse than that in a way. I just didn't care much either direction. A nurse recognizes that flat look in a patient's eyes. I recognized it fine in the bathroom mirror. I just couldn't do a thing about it. What cracked it was a woman named Deb. Deb and I trained together back in the 70s nursing school, then a few years on the same floor before she went off to travel nurse, and I stayed put in Lewiston and married Walter and grew roots. We'd kept up the way old nurses do, a Christmas card, a phone call, when somebody we'd known passed, and Deb, it turned out, had retired to Thailand. Years back, I'd half forgotten. She sent me a message that February. Nothing heavy, she didn't know how bad off I was. I hadn't told a soul. Just a photo. A blue bay, a long wooden pier, and a plate of grilled squid with a little dish of green sauce, and a message under it. Eating like a queen for $2. You'd lose your mind. When are you coming to see me? I typed back something polite about maybe someday, and I set the phone down, and I picked it up again, and I don't fully know why, but I told her the truth. Told her Walter was gone. Told her the house was too big and I didn't know what I was for anymore. First time I'd said it out loud to anybody. She didn't send me sympathy. Deb was never the type. She sent back 6 words. Well, 7. So come see. What's it cost you to look? And I sat there in that cold kitchen in Lewiston, 76 years old, a widow with a paid-off house and a shrinking little life, and I thought, what does it cost me to look? A plane ticket I could just about swing. A week of being uncomfortable somewhere new. And what was I protecting exactly by staying? The furnace? The maple tree? I booked the flight before I could talk myself out of it. Told Danny I was going to visit an old nursing friend. Didn't tell him where my head was, because I didn't rightly know myself. I just knew I had to go somewhere. I wasn't the widow in the cold house, even if it was only for a week, even if I hated it, even if it cost me a look. The heat hit me before I was off the train. I'd flown into Bangkok, and Deb had said, don't rent a car, don't do anything clever, just take the southern train down the coast. So I did 3, 4 hours rattling south with the Gulf of Thailand sliding by out the window. Rice and then palms, and then salt flats and pineapple fields for miles. And when the train finally sighed into the little station at Prachuap Hiri Khan and the door opened, the air came in like the door of an oven, wet heat, not main heat that at least has the decency to break at night. This just sat on you, warm and heavy and smelling of the sea and charcoal smoke and something sweet and rotting all at once. I stood on that platform in the clothes I'd packed for a person who lived in Maine, and I thought, well, Gail, you've done it now. Deb was on the platform in a sun hat, browner and skinnier than I remembered and grinning like a fool. There she is, she said. There's the Queen. And she loaded me into the back of a songthu that's a little pickup truck with 2 benches in the bed and a roof, the local bus, more or less. You bang on the ceiling when you want off, and we went rattling into town with the wind and the diesel in my face, and I'll be honest, I didn't feel curious yet. I felt about 100 years old and out of my depth. That lasted till the next morning, when Deb walked me down to the bay at dawn. I have to tell you about that bay. Ao Prachuap, they call it. It's a crescent, a long, slow curve of water with fishing boats sitting out on it, blue and green and wanting paint. And there's a mountain right there at the end of town, Khao Chong Krachok, with a temple up on the top of it and a stairway going up the side. And while I stood there taking it in, a monk in an orange robe came walking barefoot along the sea wall with a bowl, and people were kneeling to put rice in it, just kneeling, in the ordinary morning, on their way to whatever else. And I stood there, a lifelong Maine Methodist who hadn't felt much of anything in a church in years, and something in my chest went quiet and open in a way it hadn't since before Walter got sick. Told you, Deb said, not even looking at me. She knew. She walked me all over that town in a week, up the 390-some steps of that mountain temple, both of us puffing and laughing, with the macaque monkeys lined up on the railings, eyeing my water bottle like little pickpockets. One of them did get a lady's whole bag of oranges, right in front of us, made off with it up the rocks, and Deb about fell over laughing. Down to the morning seafood market where the squid boats had just come in, the catch still moving, and a woman weighed out prawns for us that would have been $30 in a Maine market and cost me, I did the math 3 times, about $3. That was the week the numbers first got loud. Because I'm a nurse, and a Yankee besides, and I don't trust a feeling I can't back up with a chart. So even while some old dead part of me was waking up on that seawall, another part was quietly adding. A bowl of noodles from a cart, 40 baht, call it $1.25. A whole grilled fish, market rate, a few dollars. Deb's apartment, a real 1-bedroom, ran her something. I made her repeat because I didn't believe it. And there's no Grab to speak of down here, no app taxi like the big cities. You get a motorbike, or you flag a songthu, or you walk, but a person barely needs to go anywhere because it's all right there along the one bay. The English was thin, mind you, thinner than any tourist place. Deb had a few dozen words of Thai and used every one. I had none, and felt it. A woman at the market said something kind to me. I could tell it was kind by her face, and I couldn't give her a thing back but a nod and a smile like a simpleton. That stung more than I expected. I'd spent 40 years being the one who could talk anybody down off any ledge, and here I was mute as a post over a bag of prawns. But mute in the sun beats fluent in the cold. That's about where my head landed by the end of that week. I sat on Deb's little balcony the last night with a beer sweating in my hand. A Chang, the local one, watching the lights of the squid boats come on across the black water like a second set of stars. And I thought about the maple tree, and the furnace, and the 3 empty bedrooms, and I thought, careful as I could, what's it actually cost to live here? Not to visit, to live. I flew home to Maine with a legal pad and a plan to find out. I did the numbers the way I'd chart a patient. Nothing fancy. Facts in ink, guesses in pencil, and no lying to myself, because you can't nurse a lie any more than you can nurse a rumor. Down the left side of that legal pad I put what a life in Prachuap would actually cost, a line at a time. Rent a real 1-bedroom near the water. The kind Deb had call it 12,000 baht a month, which is about $360-odd. Electric, with the air conditioning running, and the water, 2,500 baht, say $75. Food, and I let myself eat well in this budget. Markets and cooking, and eating out plenty because down here eating out barely costs more than cooking 9,000 baht, around $270. A little for transport, a motorbike and the odd songthaew and a train ticket now and then, 2,000 baht, phone and internet, 1,000. And then the 2 lines a sensible woman my age doesn't skip. Something for health, out of my own pocket, and something for the unexpected. I put down about 4,500 for routine doctoring and medicine, and another 4,000 for miscellaneous, the household bits, a temple donation, a gift home. I added it twice, about 35,000 baht a month, all in, a little over $1,000. Then down the right side I put what came in, 2,900 a month. Near enough, Social Security and the pension both. And I sat and looked at the gap between those 2 columns for a long, long time in the same cold kitchen where I'd done my sad arithmetic all winter. Only this arithmetic wasn't sad. This one had close to $1,800 a month left over in it. Left over. I hadn't had $18 left over some months in Lewiston. Now, I'm a nurse, so let me be straight with you about the parts that aren't romantic, because a plate of cheap squid isn't a plan. The visa. At my age, I was 76, then the sensible road is what they call the in-country retirement route. You come in and you sort it out from inside Thailand, and the reason you do it that way instead of the fancy retirement visa from home is that the from-home one makes you carry a big Thai-approved health insurance policy, and at 76, with any little thing in your history, that insurance is either wildly dear or they just won't write you at all, so you go the other way. What they do want to see is money that's really yours, 800,000 baht sitting in a Thai bank, seasoned a few months before you ask. That's about $24,000. Or you can prove income of 65,000 baht a month, near $2,000, and mine cleared that, but the cash in the bank is cleaner, and I had it from the house. So that's the road I took, and there's upkeep to it, which my son loves to bring up. You report your address every 90 days. You renew the whole thing once a year. If you leave the country, you get a re-entry permit first, or your visa dies at the airport, a rookie mistake I was determined not to make. It's paperwork, and it's a hot morning in a government office once in a while, and it is the honest price of the sunshine. Fine by me. The one that matters most, and the one people get wrong. Medicare. I'm on it, of course. Have been since I turned 65 like everybody. But Medicare does not cover you 1 inch outside the United States. Not here, not anywhere. So I made a decision a lot of folks agonize over. I kept paying my Medicare Part B a little over $200 a month even living over here, so that any time I fly home to the States, my coverage is right there waiting, and I don't get slapped with a lifetime penalty for having dropped it. For the day-to-day here, I pay cash, and cash goes a long way. A doctor's visit runs me $25, maybe $50, and it's good care. The big, scary what-if-something serious stuff that's the real trade-off, and I'll tell you honest how I handle it later, because my son put his finger right on it and I won't dodge it. But sitting at that kitchen table with the legal pad, the decision made itself. I called a realtor about the house before I'd fully decided, which is how I know I'd decided, told Danny over the phone. There was a long silence on the line, the kind I knew from work, and then, "You're 76, Mom," like I'd forgotten. "I know exactly how old I am," I said. "That's the whole point." I sold the little cape. Gave away most of what was in it. A life doesn't fit in 2 suitcases, and it shouldn't have to. Seasoned my money in a bank account with a name I couldn't read. And at 76 years old, I got on a one-way flight to a town I could finally, just about, pronounce. I'll not have you thinking it was all seawalls and cheap prawns, because it wasn't, and if I tell it that way, you shouldn't believe a word of the rest. The first few months were hard in ways the legal pad couldn't have warned me about. The heat, for one. On a week's visit, the heat is exotic. When you live in it, it's just there, every day, pressing down, and there's a stretch before the rains where the air doesn't move, and you take 2 showers a day, and your Maine blood swears at you. I got heat rash the first month like a baby. Me, a nurse, treating my own prickly heat and feeling like a fool. And the language was a wall, a real one, taller than I'd let myself see as a tourist. On a visit, you smile and point, and it's charming. Living here, you need the pharmacy to understand which pill. You need to explain to the landlord that the water heater's out. You need to do the ordinary human business of a day, and I couldn't. Thai is a tonal language, which means the same little word means 5 different things depending on how your voice goes up or down, and my flat main voice made a hash of all 5. I'd practice a phrase off Deb for 10 minutes and say it to a shopkeeper and get a blank, kind, sorry look and go home stinging. 40 years I'd been the one with the words. Here I was, a great tall mute farang, that's their word for a Westerner. Farang pointing at things like a toddler. And the loneliness. Deb was here, thank God, but Deb had her own life, and I couldn't lean my whole weight on her. The evenings were the worst. The sun goes down fast, this near the equator, drops like a stone about 6, and I'd sit in my little rented place with the fan going and the geckos chirping on the wall and feel the quiet come down the same way it had in Lewiston and think, you daft old woman, you've moved your loneliness 8,000 miles and paid for the privilege. There was a night in the 2nd month I sat on the edge of the bed with my phone in my hand and the airline's website open, and I very near booked a flight back to Maine. To what? I couldn't have told you. But the pull to run home to the familiar cold was real, and I won't pretend it wasn't. And under all of it, all the time I missed my grandchildren so hard it was a physical thing. I could have charted it. My granddaughter was 15, my grandson 11, and they were growing up a video call at a time in little rectangles, 12 hours out of step with me, so that their afternoon was my middle of the night. I'd stayed for them partly, all those years in Maine, and now I'd gone. There's no dressing that up. That ache is the price tag on this whole life, and it never fully comes off. What turned it wasn't one big thing. It was small, and it was slow. The way I'd been warned belonging comes here. Thai warmth is real, but it's got manners on it. A shyness. Kreng Jai, they call it. A not wanting to impose. You don't get adopted your first week. You get let in a spoonful at a time, by showing up. So I showed up. Same market stall every morning for my fish and my vegetables, till the family that ran it, a squid boat family, the husband out on the water half the night, started setting my usual aside and correcting my Thai numbers, gently, laughing, the daughter drilling me on them like I was a slow but promising student. Same coffee cart, same walk along the bay at dawn, until the monk on the almsgiving round started giving me the smallest nod, and one morning I knelt down with a little bag of rice like I'd seen the others do, and put it in the bowl, and he blessed me in words I didn't understand and didn't need to, and I walked home with my eyes stinging and not from the heat. And there was Nong, my neighbor 2 doors down, a Thai woman about Danny's age who'd worked years in a hotel up in Hua Hin and had good English and a good heart. She figured out I was on my own, and she just folded me in, not all at once. She'd knock with a plate of something. She'd write down the Thai I needed for the week on a scrap of paper. She took me to the government hospital the first time I needed a prescription, sorted and stood there and translated and wouldn't take a baht for the trouble. My pen rai, she'd say. Never mind. No worries. It's nothing. She bridged the wall for me till I could get a few bricks out of it myself. Sawasdee ka, kap kung ka. Hello. Thank you. I can say those now like I mean them, because I do. By the end of that first year, the town had a shape to it, and I had a place in the shape. Not paradise. My Thai's still a joke, and the heat still wins some afternoons, and the grandkids are still in little rectangles. But it was mine, and I'd built it, and I hadn't built anything of my own in a long, long time, which is about when Danny called and said he was finally coming to see it. And Lord help me, I was so happy I cried, and underneath the happy, some careful nurse part of me went very, very still, because I knew my son, and I knew what he was going to see. He came in June, which I tried to talk him out of June's, the tail of the hot season, before the rains really cool it, but Danny takes his vacation when the firm lets him, and not a week sooner. I stood at the little Prachuap station watching the southern train come in, and when he stepped down onto that platform in the wet heat, my boy, 50 years old and gone gray at the temples like his father, I forgot every careful thought I'd had and just grabbed him. It went sideways slow, the way these things do. He was sweating before we cleared the platform. He looked at the songthaew I flagged down the pickup with the benches, and I watched him decide not to say anything, which was worse than if he'd said something. At my place, he set his bag down and turned a slow circle, taking in the one bedroom, the fan, the 2 pots, the plastic stool, the geckos on the wall he kept flinching at, and he said, "This is it? This is the whole place?" And I said it was, and it was plenty for one, and he did the thing he does with his jaw when he's biting something back. 3 days it built. He couldn't get comfortable, and I understood it. I did nothing worked the way his life worked. No grab to summon a clean car. Menus he couldn't read. A pharmacy that wasn't a big bright chain. Seafood he poked at suspicious and wouldn't really eat, my son who grew up an hour from the Maine coast turning up his nose at the best squid on God's earth. He kept his phone out, checking the maps, checking, I think, how far we were from a hospital he'd trust. I caught him one afternoon quietly reading about the nearest big private hospital, the Bangkok hospital up in Hua Hin, 90 minutes north, and I knew the sum he was doing in his head, 90 minutes. My mother is 78, and she is 90 minutes from the kind of care she gave other people her whole life. It came out over dinner the 3rd night. We'd walk down to a little place right on the bay, plastic chairs in the sand, the squid boats lighting up out on the water one by one, about the prettiest thing I know. And I thought maybe the bay would do for him what it did for me. It didn't. Mom, he put his fork down. I need you to really hear me. This isn't a life. It's a vacation you forgot to come home from. And out it came, all of it, the speech he'd been writing on the plane. That I was too far. That I was alone. That the language, the doctors, the heat, that if I fell a nurse's own word, fell. He'd learned it from me. If I fell, there'd be nobody. That the kids barely knew me now, that his daughter had asked why Grandma left, and did I know what that did to him, to not have an answer? Come home. He'd help me find a little place near them in Massachusetts. It's not too late to have a normal last chapter, Mom. And here's the part I've turned over 100 times since. He wasn't wrong about the facts. That's what got me. Every single thing he listed was true. I am far. The care for the big serious stuff is 90 minutes off, and then Bangkok beyond that, and my honest plan for the truly bad day is the cash I've saved and the Medicare waiting back in the States. And a hard truth, I've made my peace with that at 78. No company over here will write me the gold-plated insurance for a reasonable price, so I carry the risk myself. Eyes open. He's right that the grandkids are growing up in rectangles. He's right that if I go down some night, it'll be Nong 2 doors down and not my son. Every fact, true, and every conclusion, wrong, because he was totting up the one column, the risks and the losses, and he'd left the whole other side of the ledger blank. He couldn't see it. He looked at his mother in a plastic chair on a beach, and he saw a frail old woman a long way from help. He did not see that this was the first table in 4 years I'd sat down to hungry. He'd flown in worried, and he was going to fly out worried, and there wasn't a squid boat or a sunset or a legal pad on Earth going to change it, because to change it he'd have had to have seen me in that cold house, and he never did. He was busy with his own life, as he should have been. He never saw the waiting room. I didn't shout. I wanted to. I'm his mother, and old nurses don't shout at frightened people. I reached over and took his hand, the way I used to take a patient's before bad news, and I said, "Danny, I hear you. I know it costs you, me being here. I'm not going to change your mind tonight, and you're not going to change mine, so let's not spoil the 2 days we've got left trying." And he pulled his hand back, not mean, just done, and looked out at the boats. And that was the closest I've come to grief since I buried his father. My own boy, right across the table, and the whole dark ocean between us anyway. His last morning, I got him up before dawn. Told him I wasn't asking, just this once. Do it for your mother. We walked down to the bay in that gray-blue light before the sun, when the air's as cool as it gets, and the town's just stirring. The fishing boats were coming in, and along the seawall the monks came walking barefoot on their almsgiving round, and people were kneeling to give, the way they do every single morning, the way I do now. I'd brought a little rice for the two of us. I knelt down, and I looked up at my son standing there stiff in his traveling clothes, and I patted the ground next to me, and I'll give him this. I'll give him this forever. He got down on his knees beside me on the concrete, and he put the rice in the bowl when I showed him how, and for 1 second when I saw it cross his face, the monk, the bay going pink, the boats, the monkeys just waking up on the rocks above the temple, his old mother beside him doing this strange, peaceful thing like she'd done it all her life. For 1 second, his jaw came loose and something in him went quiet, and I thought, there it is. He sees it. Then he stood up and brushed off his knees, and the second was gone. On the way back, he said it was beautiful. He did say that. And then he said, "But you can't kneel on concrete forever, Mom." And I knew we were right back where we started. He flew out that afternoon, hugged me hard and long at the station, harder than the words between us had earned, and got on the train north, and I stood on that platform till it was gone the way you do. He went home not getting it. That's the plain truth. My son came all this way, and he left believing his mother's making a sad, stubborn mistake, and there's every chance he'll believe that the rest of his life. So here's why the title of this is what it is. Some small, low part of me wishes he'd never come. Not because I don't love him, because I love him so much it undid me. For 2 years I'd built this life with my back to everything I'd left, the way you have to, the way you keep walking in a Maine blizzard by not turning around to see how far from the house you are. And Danny walked into my kitchen and turned me around, made me look, and I saw it all at once, the grandkids I'm missing in real time, Walter's grave I will never once kneel at, the maple tree, the woman I used to be to all of them, findable, an afternoon's drive away. His whole visit held that mirror up, and I couldn't look away from it, and it hurt like nothing has since the morning Walter's hand went still. That's the wishing, that's the ache, being shown the exact shape of the hole. But a mirror shows you 2 things, if you're brave enough to keep looking. And the other thing it showed me was the woman on the other side of the glass. Because I know what I was in that cold house. I was a nurse with no patients and a wife with no husband, getting smaller by the winter, waiting in a warm, safe waiting room for the only appointment nobody wants. That was the normal last chapter my son wants to drive me back to. And I know what I am here. I'm an old woman who kneels on concrete at dawn and gives rice to a monk and means it, who has a market family that saves her the good prawns and drills her on her tie, who has a neighbor named Nong that'd be at my door in the dark before my own son could book a flight, who eats like a queen for $1 and has close to $1,800 left over at the end of the month, not that the money was ever really the point, who is, for the first time in longer than I want to say, awake. It is not paradise. Let me be the honest nurse to the last. I miss those children like a chronic condition, the kind you manage but never cure. I carry a real risk on the big health day, and I don't pretend otherwise. My son and I have a sorrow between us now that a sunrise didn't fix and might not ever. Type of woman who tells you the move solved everything is selling you something. It didn't solve everything. It just gave me back the thing that was actually broken, which wasn't my bank balance and wasn't my house. It was me. Danny, if you ever do watch this, I know it looked like I was running from you. I wasn't. I was running back toward being a person your kids might actually want to know. Come see me again. Kneel on the concrete with me one more time. It's all right if you never understand it. I understand it enough for us both. Before I let you go, one last thing, since you've sat with me this long. If any part of this landed, if you're somewhere near where I was, in a house that's gone too quiet, doing the sad arithmetic, wondering if the numbers could ever work for somebody like you, there's a free tool down in the description worth your while. The Honest Thailand Retirement Starter Kit, it's called. I didn't make it, and I'm not selling you a thing. It's a plain self-check that'll tell you straight whether this is even a fool's errand for you, and a worksheet where you run your own real numbers, city by city, the honest way I ran mine on that legal pad. Costs you nothing. And if it tells you to stay right where you are, well, that's an honest answer too, and worth knowing. That's all I've got. Take care of yourself out there.